Hi, I'm Stehlik. Really cool to meet you online. I'm the CEO of Bon Hotels, and we're going to be chatting about our exciting growth into Africa, what you can expect from us in the years to come, and what on earth we're doing in Nigeria, of all places. So let's get straight into it. I think at Bon Hotels we consider ourselves to be masochists. And what is a masochist? Is someone who enjoys giving pain to themselves. And in many ways, that is our approach as far as our expansion into Africa is concerned, because we know that if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Okay? The reality of doing business outside of South Africa, to a lesser degree outside of sub-Saharan Africa, is that it's really not easy. It's difficult. But again, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And as masochists, at least we seem to enjoy giving ourselves kind of problems and hassles, but the reality is that sometimes the opportunities work, sometimes the opportunities don't work, but we have a lot of fun trying. Hotels, as a relatively young hotel group, is we take the opportunities that no one else wants. Sometimes because those are the only opportunities, but sometimes we take those opportunities because we honestly do see value in the opportunity. So again, many hotel groups have tried their luck in Nigeria and other African countries. Many of them have come back to South Africa with their tails between their legs. But we're going to give it our best possible crack. We see the value, we see the opportunities, and I'm going to expand on those opportunities throughout my presentation. So, who is Bon Hotels? Who are we? We're first and foremost good people, and I think this is really important for that we position ourselves there. Not necessarily position isn't really the right word, but it's something that we want to make really clear. We're not scallops. We are good people. We're honest, and we're genuinely people that you enjoy doing business with. We believe that people do business with people they like, and we certainly are a likable bunch of people, I'd like to believe. We are an African hotel group run by Africans who understand Africa. We've got extensive knowledge of how to manage and market hotels throughout Africa from our Protea Hotels days. Many of us spent many years within Protea Hotels at relatively high levels, and it was Protea Hotels who definitely pioneered the concept of managing and marketing hotels on behalf of owners, and that is something that we pride ourselves upon. Our head office is in Cape Town. We've got regional offices in Johannesburg and in Lagos. What do we do at Bon Hotels? We are a hotel owning company. Yes, we own a number of our hotels. We've got some hotels from with different brands within our portfolio, but essentially our purpose at Bon Hotels, our mantra, our ethos, whatever you'd like to call it, we call it ethos, is to take hotels that could be administrated, managed and marketed better, and then to administrate, manage and market them better. That is the core of what we do. We've no longer engaging leasing hotels or acquiring hotels for that matter. Our core business is exactly that. What is our growth perspective? We're very nervous of growing too quickly. We're very skeptical of it. We've seen so many hotel groups throughout South Africa make that particular mistake, and at the end of the day, what one typically sees is a hotel group growing too quickly and not adding value to one's stakeholders, particularly one's owners. Okay, so we are very cognizant of that, but at the same time, we've got to balance the growth of our company with the opportunities that we come across all the time. And if I had to tell you that on occasion we have 2, sometimes 3, sometimes more opportunities hitting my desk on a daily basis for hotel projects for Africa, that wouldn't be an exaggeration. As far as our operating standards are concerned, we believe in profitable standards at our hotels. That means that the hotels have to be delivering profits, okay, but they've got to be delivering standards at the same time. We have very high standards, operational standards at our properties, and the balance between profits and standards is very, very clear for us. The most important thing as far as our operating ethos is concerned is that we're offering value to our stakeholders, to our owners. If our owners are not seeing the value that we're generating, okay, we're not going to get our agreements renewed, and we're not going to get new projects. So that is our number one focus. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of why we're in Africa, why we're outside of South Africa. Okay. So I've been asked to speak about why we looked outside of our borders. It's quite simple. It's where the opportunities for us are. Okay. The South African hotel hospitality landscape at the moment, I wouldn't say it's saturated, but there's certainly pockets of oversupply. We're seeing a situation where the political landscape is exceptionally risky at the moment, and over the last couple of years we've seen numerous own goals being scored by the powers that be, by our politicians, by our governments, that have left us in a pretty precarious situation. Our GDP growth is negligible, although we can argue that we're now entering a different phase of our political evolution with Ramaphosa in charge. All of these factors have led us to make the decision to look outside of our borders for opportunity, because we're not going to find the growth here. Okay. We're seeing international hotel groups enter aggressively into the African and South African landscape. And through the consolidation of the mega hotel groups, we're seeing mergers in that regard, which are lessening the opportunities for us in the big hotel space. And I'm talking 120 rooms upwards, which are fortunately opening opportunities for us in the smaller hotel space. We've got the opportunity to take our mid-market, 3-star South African hotel model into Africa. And one has to agree with me on one thing, that our 3-star hotels are probably the best in the world here in South Africa. I'm talking about our 3-star full-service city center properties. You go anywhere else in the world, you will not be able to compare a traditional 3-star offering that we have in this country with theirs. And therein lies the opportunity for us to replicate this particular product or service into Africa. So again, why look outside of our borders? And I'm going to give you some statistics, but before we go into the stats of why we look at Nigeria in particular, we've got a situation in Nigeria where there are, on an annual basis, there are 3 million new middle-class Nigerians emerging into the market, into the economy, into the domestic travel space, into the corporate arena every year. Nigerians have recently had the benefit of upgraded roads, better regional flight arrangements, world-class inter-regional airlines. The one thing that's been missing in our opinion is world-class mid-market hotels. And this is what our 3-star full-service hotel model brings to the party. When one looks at the international hotel groups entering Africa, the common thread is quite a simple one to see. The big groups, many of whom, such as Hilton, Starwood, etc., have been in Africa for a long time, many decades. Their traditional model is to put down roots in a city with a mega hotel, 800 rooms, 1,000 bedroom hotels, 1,000 bedroom property, full service, huge conferencing, and not necessarily expand further unless further opportunities in equal-sized cities in those countries became available. So as we can see, Hilton, for example, in Nigeria, the Hilton in Abuja is a mega hotel, incredibly busy, and one could argue that it might mean that Hilton might not require another property in Nigeria. They could literally tick off the box. Nigeria, we've got covered. We're not an 800 bedroom space at this stage, so we're very happy to lap up the smaller hotel opportunities between 40 rooms and 120 rooms. So let's look at a couple of stats. Let's look at Nigeria. Okay, and unfortunately I'm going to just have to read through a few, but here we go. Listen to this. Nigeria is experiencing GDP growth of right now 3%, forecast to hit 4 to 6% in the next 2 years. South Africa is experiencing 0. Okay. The Citigroup believe that the average GDP growth in Nigeria will get up to about 7%, okay, and that it will head the GDP growth throughout the world between 2020 and 2050. Nigeria's got the strongest economy in the world now by some distance. Standard & Poor, the ratings agency, have given it a stable outlook, B+. It's got a population of 375 million people. It's got a labor force of 74 million people, but only 10 million people unemployed. Okay? Look at South Africa's 30% unemployment. Oil revenues currently account for 2/3 of state revenue, but funny enough, only contributes 9% to GDP growth. And this, there's been a conscious decision in Nigeria to diversify the economy really, really quickly through telecoms, banking, domestic tourism, film, etc. It's got rapidly declining inflation, okay, which is sitting at 10% today. Corruption, however, remains endemic throughout Nigeria, but its ranking on the corruption index is improving, and it's currently ranked 147 out of 180 countries. Be interesting to see where we in South Africa are sitting right now. From a tourism perspective, Lagos enjoys the highest occupancy growth in Africa, okay, which is 14.8% up in last year. It's also, unfortunately, got the highest decline in ADR, okay, and that could be due, in particular, to the emergence of, the creation of many new hotel projects there. From a domestic perspective, the real opportunities for domestic tourism, okay, as we see increased economic activity, we start to see increased travel, disposable income changes, and propensity for domestic corporate travel. We're seeing improved roads, better airlines, better airports, and more efficient visa processes, although that is still a nightmare at the moment. The government still doesn't see or recognize the blockage that it's causing in that regard. We're seeing a situation with 80% domestic and 20% international, interregional hospitality market. There's very little leisure, okay, although we know that all emerging hospitality markets enjoy a similar kind of profile at the beginning. Very strong corporate and eventually domestic leisure opportunities opening up. We believe that the gaps in Nigeria are for 3-star top quality South African standard or international standard hotels. We need more flights from South Africa to Abuja and to Lagos at more favorable times. We need to see, well, Nigeria needs to see a bona fide low-cost airline, okay, being created, which will stimulate more domestic travel. There are lots of flights regionally throughout Nigeria, but it's expensive. We need to see more local hotel schools training going on. The other opportunity is for hotel developers to make sure that they work with renowned hospitality groups from the development stage of their hotels. We call it the African syndrome, where so many of the hotel projects that we come across in Africa, throughout Africa, are where the owner has tried to do it themselves. They've developed the property themselves, they've gone and procured the hotel themselves, gone to China, they've bought all the wrong things, and in our professional opinion, rendered their hotel projects to the ground. If they had worked with a hotel group from concept, it would have been a very different story. All right, so again, Nigeria. why we're there. We've gone through some economic indicators and the writing's certainly on the wall, but that still doesn't make it any easier. We've got the experience of being on the ground in Nigeria for about 20 years. Again, with our Protea hospitality management background and knowledge of Nigeria, this is a really, really important thing for us. Okay. We think we've got a good understanding of what it takes to do good business in Nigeria, even in the face of yet another South African hotel group pulling out of Nigeria. Many of you would have read the travel news yesterday about a major hotel group pulling out of Nigeria. We see it the other way around. We believe that the secrets of doing business in Nigeria and in many, many African countries for that matter lie with a couple of factors, but most importantly, your local partners, who they are. Have you done your homework extensively? Okay. Do you have people on the ground? Have you got an office in Lagos? Have you got a regional office on the ground? Or are you trying to run the business from Cape Town or Johannesburg, which we know doesn't work? Are you compliant with the local laws, okay, and regulations? And yet again, we see certain South African arrogance lately with some of these massive fines being imposed on South African communications companies in Nigeria for not complying with the local registrations. And we are skrik about that. And then the last thing is, are you upskilling your locals? Or are you just one of the other international hotel groups that fills your property up with expats that you pull out every 2 years and replace them every 2 years? Okay. Or are you upskilling the locals to take over from those expats? We feel very, very strongly about that. It gives you a major competitive advantage on the ground as well. So let's shift from Nigeria for a second. And you may ask yourselves, what are the other hotspots for Bon hotels throughout Africa at the moment, apart from Nigeria? We already have 3 hotels in Ethiopia, okay, all in Addis. We'll probably have more there in the future. DRC, we're taking a new hotel over very soon. And we have 5 hotels that are due to open in the next 6 months in Angola. So those are the 3 countries at the moment that we see the most opportunity for ourselves. Will we be covering our bases in South Africa? Yes. The opportunities are not as strong as they are outside of our borders, but we need to create a tourism circuit in South Africa, just like what we're doing in Nigeria and elsewhere. Let's talk about some of the advantages or disadvantages of being a regional hotel player versus an international hotel player. And here again, I give all the kudos in the world to the international hotel groups. I'm not throwing stones at them in any way, but from a regional perspective, I think we have certain advantages over the international hotel groups, and they've certainly got many advantages over us. But to sum up a couple of the advantages that I believe are important is again the development ethos of the big hotel groups is to get typically involved in big 5-star hotels. Okay, that is the domain throughout Africa of the big international hotel groups, and we see that stay. So therefore, that opens up opportunities for us into the smaller corporate style hotels. Okay, 120 rooms and less, mid-market, sometimes not in as great locations as the big international corporate hotels, but opportunities nonetheless. Being on the ground, I cannot underestimate the importance of that. Okay. Again, the international hotel groups don't necessarily have as much on the ground presence as we would. For example, in Lagos, with the full regional office on the ground, boots on the ground, so to speak, so that when there is a problem with an owner or a new hotel development, our senior chap on the ground can attend to it straight away. rather than it having to come through Brussels or Washington or whatever the case is. Local partners, again, a critical success factor. Your local partners will keep you appraised and updated with the lay of the land, local rules, regulation changes, political appointments, political relationships, etc. Flexibility, again, a regional or local hotel group will be more flexible than international hotel groups in all sorts of areas, but at the same time not necessarily detracting from important things like fire life and safety, okay? But taking a more flexible approach. One also cannot underestimate how valuable our South African expat general managers are. Okay? We will only use we will only use expatriate general managers and chefs where we need to. If there is a local general manager or local chef that is up to standard, we will definitely use them. But because so many of our hotel projects are new projects, we need to send general managers in straight away. Typically, the expats that we use are general managers and the chefs. Our South Africans are a special breed. They are tough beyond and resourceful beyond all belief, which is exactly what one needs when one takes on projects throughout Africa, and particularly projects outside of the big cities. Okay, it's all very well having all the resources available to you in Lagos and Abuja, but when you start getting into places like Wari and Kiti and Owerri, one needs to have one's wits about them and be resourceful, be a MacGyver, so to speak. So our expats are really important, and typically they're in for 2 years. And after that, we believe that 80% of our expats would have passed on the necessary skills to a local. Deputy general managers are always locals, and they should be able to take over. The deep-rooted relationships that one has by being a regional player, by being on the ground, deep-rooted relationships with service providers, with travel agents, intermediaries, the corporates themselves, and with suppliers, one can't underestimate that. Our objective in most countries that we operate in is to create what we call a tourism circuit. And we're not talking about classic tourism or leisure tourism. We're talking about the movement of people on aeroplanes, car rental, into hotels for whatever reasons. Corporate travel, domestic leisure, doesn't matter. And in Nigeria, we're starting to get that right, okay? Where we've got a circuit of hotels in all the important commercial hubs throughout the country. Even up in the north, which has always been particularly risky because of the fundamentalists, the religious fundamentalist issues that have taken place there. And obviously under the new regime, under the Buhari regime, that has been lessened to a greater degree, which allows our emergence into the north, where there are no hotel groups, no international hotel groups, and very few regional hotel groups. And one of the ways that we can improve on this tourism circuit is through our Bon Ami program, which is our loyalty program. And I must say that our loyalty program has absolutely exploded into cyberspace through Nigeria, where we're selling about 150 cards, loyalty cards, a day. And these are creating Bon apostles throughout the country, where discounts and benefits accrue to those who have the cards, and those can be exchanged and earned and burned at Bon hotels throughout the country. So, for example, the biggest circuit at the moment in Nigeria is between Lagos and Abuja, and we've got hotels in both those cities, which is really, really important for people wanting to experience the brand in as many places, geographical places in the country as possible. So it's our strategy to improve on the circuits that we have in Nigeria and in the other countries, but in order to do that, you first need to be there. You need to start somewhere. So we're going to be doing that in Ethiopia, we're going to be doing that in Angola, and to a lesser degree in DRC. From a leadership point of view, something I'd just like to leave with you is something I feel quite strongly about, that many hotel executives are too nervous to enter certain countries throughout Africa because of the fear of having to do bribes. I can proudly stand in front of you today and say that, first of all, we would never do it. Secondly, we're not going to do it. Thirdly, we've never done it. And fourthly, you don't need to do it. Okay. If a hotel owner or a politician or whatever sees the value of what you are bringing to the party, there shouldn't be a need to have to work with a bribe. So again, as corruption is getting more and more exposed throughout Africa and even in our own country, as we see, I think that pattern is going to be followed throughout Africa and certainly in other countries throughout the world. It's going to become easier to do business in those countries. It's been a pleasure talking to you all in this forum. Looking forward to your feedback. Make contact with me at any point over the next 20-30 minutes. And even after that, if there's something you'd like to discuss or a hotel project you'd like to discuss with me, look me up. Be happy to chat to you. Thank you.